Today we'll be speaking with Phil McGraw, also known as Dr. Phil, host of Dr. Phil Prime Time on Merritt Street Media, and author of the new book, We've Got Issues, How You Can Stand Strong for America's Soul and Sanity. You know, I'm very interested to speak to you today because in preparation for our interview, I've been watching some of the Fox News appearances, looking at the book, etc. I never really saw you as a guy who delved into political issues per se. You seem more willing, interested, and I must say, maybe more conservative than I thought you were. Is that a fair assessment?
Not at all.
Okay.
Because I am so not political, you can't even believe it. And I'll tell you why. I know nothing about politics. And, and I know why you say that. It sounds like it.
Right.
I talk about these things as cultural issues from a psychological, psychosocial standpoint, how they affect families and people. And they do overlap with some of the things that politicians talk about, but they talk about it from a political standpoint, funding standpoint, how they can get this bill or that bill through. Couldn't care less. But I am interested in those issues in terms of how they impact families in their day-to-day pursuit of life and peace and being able to raise their family in a healthy environment. So there's a lot of overlap, but I don't talk about it from a political standpoint because I frankly don't know enough about the politics of it all.
Well, guys, man, I get what he's talking about. I get exactly where Dr. Phil is coming from in this. Because again, things have become, cultural. Politics have become cultural. They haven't. I mean, again, look at what's happened. I mean, just in the last 10, 20 years. I mean, could you imagine what's on TV now being on TV 20 years ago? No. I mean, again, they show during prime time, they show nudity, or at least partial nudity. And again, the words that they use, I mean, they're horrible. Now, again, flashback, 50, 60 years ago. I mean, again, you did not find married couples laying in the same bed years ago. I mean, the Flintstones, I think, were the first ones. The Flintstones, I'd Love Lucy. They were the first ones to show a married couple in bed. I mean, again, we have truly got to recognize what's going on. Now, prime time, they show naked butts. I mean, again, we have songs on the radio called WASP or whatever it is. We have to recognize, man, we are seeing the downfall of society. We are witnessing it. And again, it's causing chaos, causing decay. It's not good. It's evil. It's wrong. We have got to see that and recognize that. So, again, there's a big overlap when it comes to politics and culture. We have got to recognize that because right now what we're doing is we're fighting for the very soul of this nation. And again, like Dr. Phil said, it starts with the family.
The reason why I say it is a lot of the language in the book and when you talk about issues like immigration and culture and others, it seems as though it alludes to going back to the good old days, individual decisions in the style that many Republicans now talk about with regard to schooling and parenting, et cetera. But you're saying it's just not the case.
No, and that doesn't mean that there aren't politicians on both sides of the aisle that talk about these issues. But if you really think about raising a family in America, whether it's now or 50 years ago or 20 years down the road, we still have to keep our eye on what I think are core issues in America. And I think the backbone of America is the family unit. I really think that if we have strong families, if we have strong family values, and I think that our families in America, as you've heard me say and read me say, are under attack. And I think some of those attacks are unintended consequences of technology, for example. But these are things that, whether politicians talked about them or not, if they tried to legislate about them or not, I would still be talking about.
So give some examples of that. What are some of the attacks facing families?
Well, I think about 08, 09, we had what I think has been the biggest change to human life since the Industrial Revolution. I think before the Industrial Revolution, we were a very agricultural civilization, right? People worked on the farms. We grew what we needed. But then we became mechanized, and I think back then we were 95% agricultural. Now we're 1% agricultural. Why? Because everything is so mechanized and people move to the cities and all. Well, the biggest thing that's happened since then, in my opinion, was the advent of the smartphone. The internet became so prolific. And I mean, think about it. We're walking around in 08, 09 with as much computing power in our hands with smartphones, laptops, iPads, that we had when we did the moon shot. When we put a man on the moon, we didn't have as much computing power as we can hold in our hands.
You know, guys, man, I think Dr. Phil's right. I do. But I think for the most part, man, they know what they're doing, and they're doing it on purpose. They know what they're doing. They're influencing people because, again, they knew back 40, 50 years ago that you could influence the buying habits of families by, again, commercials. You can spread things on TV. People are impressionable. Adults, they're impressionable. They're like, oh, yeah, we want that. We got to have that. We got to have that new car. And again, kids, well, got to have that new toy. But it's not just that. That's not dangerous. Not the way that, again, you might be a girl. You might be a girl trapped in a boy's body. Let's get rid of that pesky penis. Those testicles. They gotta go. And again, you might be a girl. You might be a girl underneath, trapped in that boy's body. Ooh. And again, man, they're telling white people, hey, you're white. You're white. You're a white supremacist. You don't like black people. Yeah, I do. No, you don't. You don't realize just how racist you are. But I'm not. Yes, you are. Don't you argue with us. We know we're black and brown. We know exactly what you are. No, you don't. You do. You're racist. And you need to hire black people to come over to your house and tell you over supper how racist you are. Yeah, I'll do that. Right after I take my kid to the transgender clinic or whatever, because again, they need hormone blockers. I mean, we have to realize just how insane this is. Just how crazy what's going on is. And again, we're allowing the southern border wide open. Why? Because again, so many people don't want to be called racist. So again, they'd rather have the southern border wide open. They believe they're doing the right thing. They're God's gift. They're doing the right thing. And if they don't allow that, then they're racist. So again, they call, the right wingers racist. Bad people that don't want the southern border open. Because again, they don't care about the migrants. They don't care. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care. And neither do you. Neither do you. I care about my country and my people. White, black, doesn't matter. I care about my country. That's it. But again, they're convincing you that, again, if you want that border shut, you're a racist. If you don't want to bring your kid to get sex reassignment or whatever, then guess what? You're transphobic. If you don't want to allow your kid to go to drag shows or whatever, you're homophobic. If you don't, again, if you don't vote for reparations or whatever, then guess what? You're a racist. And you're probably a racist anyways, because you're white.
You and I are aligned on this one. What about the ones that fall under what you call the tyranny of the fringe? Because I don't think the smartphone example falls under that category, right?
No, that's why I say some of this is the unintended consequences of like technology. But then we've got some where we've got people that are just trying to change some of the core values in America, core values of family, trying to rewrite history. And we've got people that are coming in saying, well, we want to change history, we want to change what kids are being taught in history, we want to change biology, we want to change all of the things that we have for 100 years had empirical data to support.
But tell me more about, I don't want to gloss over this. I really want to understand this. Changing history. Okay, what was the history that used to be taught that now has been changed by the tyranny of the fringe?
Well, pick an area. We can talk about biology, where we have always had two sexes.
But what about history? Now, just to pick history, not biology, because you said history, biology. What about history?
Well, there's a lot of history to biology, and you would be missing a big point to pretend that there's not historical biology. But if you want to talk about history, we can, not in biology, but just talk about the history of mankind.
Yeah.
We've got areas where they don't want to talk about slavery. We had one a group of people that wanted to start describing slavery in history books as involuntary relocation.
Right.
First of all, number one, we got to realize that there is history with biology. There is. I mean, again, man, for all of humankind, all of mankind, throughout the ages, there's been male and female, boys and girls, men and women. That's it. You truly get to realize that. But again, man, Dr. Phil said, hey, look, man, if you want to talk about something else, we will. And again, man, there was this group apparently in Texas that wants to redefine slavery as involuntary relocation. And again, man, that's stupid. That's stupid. We got to call things for what they are. Doesn't matter what what side you're on. You have got to call things for what they are. But again, the reason why he let into it that way is because, again, that kind of breaks the ice. That says, okay, if you want to talk about this, we'll talk about that. But majority of the problem is on the left. We have got to realize that. I mean, again, the people, the party that gets offended if you use the wrong pronouns. I mean, again, they get offended if you say something that makes them uncomfortable. So again, they're going to change history. They're going to tear a statue down, but they're going to do whatever because they're uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable with history. If it looks bad, if it makes them feel bad. And again, they want to make certain people look worse, and they want to make other people look better. They want to, again, tear down statues because they make other people uncomfortable. And again, that's changing history.
So if I hear you correctly, you're not in agreement with those who want to minimize the tragedy and brutality of slavery, but you also want to keep the school names. If a school is named after a slave owner, you're also okay with that because it will remind us and we will learn from it. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think you're oversimplifying what I'm saying. What
Okay.
I'm saying is, if you're wanting to change American history to pretend that these people did not exist, and you want to measure them by today's yardstick rather than the yardstick at the time, that's what is referred to as presentism. And that's like saying, okay, you're going to drive through a neighborhood and the speed limit is 20. And you drive through that neighborhood doing 20, and then they come along and say, you know what, we're going to change the speed limit to 10, and we're going to give you a ticket for speeding when the speed limit was 20. It's now 10, but you weren't speeding when you were doing 20, but now it's 10. We're going to give you a retroactive ticket for doing what was acceptable at the time. That's called presentism. We're going to take what was done back at the time, pull it up into the current time, and condemn you for not knowing what was going to be acceptable 200 years later than when you did it. And I think that is really narcissistic and arrogant and rewriting history instead of letting people learn from the mistakes that were made in America and that we need to learn from so we don't make those mistakes again. Because some of those people also did some really good things at the time. We don't need to endorse everything they did, but we need to acknowledge the good and the bad.
I totally agree with Dr. Phil. Totally agree with him, man, because again, we like to measure people to the standard of today from years ago. And again, that's wrong. That's arrogant. Because again, you're not putting things in the proper context. You're not. You're saying, hey, look, man, you shouldn't be that way because I'm not. You live in 2024. They lived in 1804. I mean, again, you have no idea. You weren't alive during that time. You have no idea what you do, what you would be, what kind of views you would have. If you're brought up around certain things to have a certain view, you would have that. It would be very difficult for you to have something different. And that really speaks highly of people, our founding fathers and others. Again, they recognize, man, that's wrong. That is wrong. And again, they don't teach that. They don't teach that, again, America and Britain, again, they stopped the slave trade. They sent the Navy to their death, people to their death, stop the slave trade. We've got to recognize that. But again, they don't talk about that. They truly don't. And again, they don't talk about that there were more white slaves in North Africa than there ever were black slaves here. They don't talk about that stuff. Because again, they don't want to. It doesn't fit the narrative. That's one thing about changing history. They don't like talking about what they don't like. I mean, again, the wrong pronouns. Don't use actually the right pronouns. Don't use the right pronouns because again, that's not the ones I want. Don't talk about the history I don't like because it's not what I want. That's truly what the left does. And again, I'm going to look at people from the past through the lens of the present because I'm better than what they are. No, you're not. You're just more arrogant than what they were. They were probably really great people, great men that built this country. And again, you're an egotistical little shit that believes you're better because you're looking at them through the lens of now. They grew up, in 1704. You were born in 2004. You don't know your ass from a hole in the ground. Shut up. But this whole idea. I mean, again, when I was a kid, 40 years ago when I was a kid, I mean, again, white supremacist, that meant, a KKK person. Nowadays, man, everyone's white. That is white. It's a white supremacist. They believe, again, they're racist. They don't know they're racist, but they're racist. And again, a racist, when I was a kid, again, they wore a long white robe. That was a racist. I mean, again, somebody that had, swastikas or whatever, man. That was. But nowadays, everyone this white is. It's not real. It's not real. None of it is. And what they're doing is they're pushing things like that. They're pushing, some kind of made up stuff. So people could think so great, so highly of them now when they're looking back at the past. And again, I've had people tell me, of course, that were a lot younger than me, tell me that, back when you were a kid, again, man, people were racist. They were, no, you dumbass. I mean, I hate to keep cussing, but it's like, man, no, that didn't happen. Again, I grew up in the South back, 40 some odd years ago. And again, white and black kids, they hung out. They played ball together. This was after Jim Crow and everything. They played ball together. They hung out together. They spent the night at each other's house. Again, things are worse now, much, much worse now than they ever were years ago. I mean, I'm sorry, it's true. But again, people, they can't accept it. I know. I'm 25 and I know. No, you don't. You don't know your ass from the hole in the ground. You truly don't. But guys, man, if you would, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Thanks.
You son of a.